Good morning, here's Kramer's Corner with the daily technical update, and as usual we start with S&P 500. That didn't do much last night. Look out for 44.30 minor support here. If we break below that, then we are likely to test the support here around 4,328.30 level. That could be quite key on the medium term. Nasdaq bounced just above the 15,138. That is the level to look out for very short term. And if it's broken, then we are looking at 14,687. And to the upper side with 15,561 to keep an eye on. DAX back below the falling trend line, so a little bit of a false break there. We are back in bearish sentiment. AX Amsterdam still range bound between 730 and 750. Can't really break that, but I believe it will eventually, and I do believe it will be to the downside. That's what RSI is telling me. Not much going on there really. We have the Belgian market back below the 36.96, so a little bit of false break. Couldn't really follow through, breaking above the 200 moving average, forming this inverted hammer-like pattern here. So we are back in this range here between 3,600 and 3,700, and I expect that to continue. CAC 40 also back below the falling trend line after forming this doji inverted hammer-like pattern here. So it couldn't close above 7,405, which was crucial, and we are back in negative sentiment, negative trend. So not really much news there, to be honest. On the FX markets, euro-dollar found support here at the 106.35, which we have been talking about is a crucial support also in the medium term and for the weekly RSI, as you can see here, bouncing a little bit. And I actually do believe we'll see euro-dollar bouncing from this support up till testing the upper falling trend line. Maybe spiking up to 108, but I'm not quite sure that it'll jump that high. However, there could be room up to 108.77, which is the 38.2 retracement of the sell-off here. I mean, there should be energy if they really can get their act together. But there are some obstacles. There's the falling trend line. There's the 200 moving average, and we have now the 100 coming down, 55 coming down. So the underlying sentiment is fairly bearish, but we should see a correction here. If it does break below 106.30, then we are. It could be hit by a sell-off down to around 105, but I still believe we will see a bit of a correction. Euro sterling has broken above its falling trend line in this descending like pattern here. So it's tested again this morning from the upper side, and I think we will see a move up to around 106.70, where there's some resistance, but we could move up to around 87, which is the peak of the descending triangle, and that's a rule of thumb that we should move to the highest level in a triangle. And we also have the 200 moving average lying just above here. But what we can also do, and I'll just show you that very quickly, we can measure this distance if we're using the arrow here and say, okay, so this is the difference of the bottom and the peak of the descending triangle, and then add to the breakout. So that gives us around 88. As a rule of thumb, we should be able to travel that distance. However, since it's not the most perfect one, it could be dented a little bit. So 87 and a change, I believe we will see. It could be a struggle all the way up to 88, but we shouldn't rule it out. Cable still in this falling trend line here, or in trend channel. 123 support could be tested here shortly, but as we can see, it's stressed a little bit. So the sellers are getting weaker, but we are still in a bearish sentiment on the RSI, and we are below 200. I believe we'll see 123 here fairly shortly. Dollar yen Still caught it in this range between 146.5 and 148. We need a breakout, and it's really hard to tell which way it's gonna go, to be honest. But I mean, it is still in an uptrend, but there's divergence, as you can see. The peak values, the values here on the RSI has been declining. We need a break above that falling trend line, and a break above 148 for a move to 149, 150. Euro yen. Also range bounce, not really much to say there. Aussie yen has broken above the 95, got kicked back a little bit, but now it seems it's really taking off this morning. So let's see if it can follow through. So 95.85 is next crucial resistance. A break above that, well, then we're looking at previous peaks here just below 98. That should be observed. To demolish this entire picture, we'll need at least to get back below the falling trend line here, and then followed by a move below 93.5 to totally demolish. But I do believe we'll move higher here on this one. Aussie dollar. It's really trying to get back up here, and I think we will see it slowly moving up towards 65.20, where there's some resistance. If it breaks above that, then we're looking at 66, but it's struggling a little bit, but I do believe we'll see it. There's divergence on the RSI, and it could materialize into a double bottom pattern, but let's see when it breaks that resistance at 65.22. Dollar index in this rising channel here, a little bit choppy, as we would say. We have divergence on the RSI, so the uptrend is weakening. We should see a correction. There's still room up to 105.78, 80, around that level, but I think we will see a correction before that. Key support around 104.40, 45. If it does break below the lower rising trend line and the support area, well, then the correction could be a little bit larger than expected. Gold caught in a range between 1900 and 1950, and I expect that to be the picture here the next couple of weeks. So not really much to say there. Silver bounced off again, and I think we'll see it back to around 23.5, 20. Maybe even up to 24 if it can really get its mojo back. But I would expect for the next couple of weeks, just fluctuating between these 22.5 and 24. It's a little bit annoying. We can't get a real direction on it, but that's how it is sometimes. More or less the same picture on copper. After trying to get back above 382, never closed above. And we are now back in bearish mode, and as you can see here, there's a negative sentiment. So I think we'll test these lows here at 371, and we could still drop to around 365, 362 before we probably will see buyers coming back. In the bigger picture on copper, it seems like it's forming this kind of a symmetrical triangle. It's not the best one since there's a lot of white space around here, but nevertheless, if it breaks below the lower rising trend line, well, then it could really get hammered down to around 350. But we do have the 200 moving average coming up here. It's the weekly chart that will add some support. So what I do expect is to see copper being range bound in this range here, and more or less basically just trading sideways out of this triangle-like pattern. On the energy front, we still have Brent and crude oil, Brent and WTI crude oil moving higher. Brent has surpassed the 200% of this correction here, so it's still moving higher. As you can see, we're a little bit stretched. We are in almost in 80 on the RSI, but there's no divergence. So we could move higher. There's still room, and there's room up to 98.75. There's no strong resistance until that. Although on the WTI, we are very close to its strong resistance at 93.48, and that could be a little bit of a struggle, and that will probably also put a damper on the Brent. So that's going to be interesting. Which one is the strongest? This one on the WTI, or will it be that it will just go straight through and the Brent, which is a little bit higher up, will be stronger than the WTI? So that's going to be interesting, but I do expect to see a correction around these levels, around 93, 93 and a half, before we will move higher. On the yields, we are back above the 430, moving higher. Got rejected at 436 was the previous peak here, but I believe we have room up to 448 on the US 10-year. And if we just quickly look at the Eurobond dropping below the support here, so we are talking about higher yields also in Europe. I will do an update on the European and the US yields later today. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day and happy trading.